All right, good morning. It is Monday, November 7th, 2020. This is DC Signal to Noise. Since we last talked, Russian President Putin has transformed the deal to Ukrainian grain exports into a negotiation tool. U.S. President Biden addressed the nation, declaring that democracy is at risk in Tuesday's vote. The Federal Reserve raised the Fed funds rate by 3/4 of a basis point. Crude oil futures climbed back on the top side of $90 a barrel. The Cyclones finally won a Big 12 football game. Congratulations to the Houston Astros and manager Dusty Baker. They are the champions of the 2022 World Series. I did not win the Powerball, and Election Day 2022 is one day away. Jim Wiesemeyer, Pro Farmer Policy Analyst. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Chip. Yeah, I think, well, you still have another chance tonight on the Powerball.
Oh, yeah. Oh, don't worry. No, as of this point, the way I see it is I've got like 6 chances.
Okay.
Since I've got the 6 numbers. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So can you imagine? I can't even imagine it. You know what? I will come back one more time if I win that. One more time.
To say goodbye.
To say goodbye. That's right.
Well, you know me, I'll keep working.
Yeah. Yes, I figure you probably will. Yep. You got your way. Dusty Baker got his championship.
Dusty Baker Jr. got his way. Yeah, I think a lot of people, former Cubs fans, Nationals fans, he has had a illustrative career, and he's just a good person.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Let's go ahead and get in. Mention this. And oh, by the way, if you would like to participate in the conversation, or if you've got a question, a comments tab on your screen someplace, click on that and type it in there. Our producer, Big Apple Joe Stackler, will be watching that. I'll be watching that as well, and we will get to the questions and comments as appropriate. I mentioned it in the open, and I'm going to go straight to it because this is something from last week that I think we need to address. President Biden's speech, the democracy is at risk. It's a theme that former President Obama pulled into his weekend appearances. But we talked about it on Friday on the Free for All. I got some negative feedback on some of our comments, Jim. More my comments than yours, but I will say this: the positive feedback I got outnumbered the negatives by 10-1. Tells me that a majority of listeners agree that this was a divisive election season address delivered by a sitting president. Didn't feel right at all.
Yeah. Well, there's always two sides to any topic. But again,
Sure.
when a president speaks, he should speak for all Americans and not segment out a group.
Yeah.
It gave the signal that he's identified one group that it would almost be the end of democracy, and it's a bit overkill. Now, his own party is criticizing, some in his own party is criticizing him, and if the Democrats do lose at least the House, maybe the Senate, they're going to point fingers right at the strategy of the Democratic Party, in particular Biden, along with those comments he made last week and also in Philadelphia that were even more somber.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to some of the election projections as we get into what to look for this week. But taking a look at what happened last week, let's go ahead and jump into Russia, because Russia has obviously turned the negotiations or the deal on Ukrainian grain into a negotiation deal. They want to get more so that they can get sanctions on Russia lifted to allow those exports.
Yeah, you're cutting up a little bit, at least for me, Jeff. I'm not quite sure why. Yeah, but
yeah, I see that.
But Putin, he is clearly he's used this grain pact as a leverage before, and he'll do it again. That's Putin One, he wants to get more of his fertilizers, wheat, and other commodities exported at favorable rates, and it'll happen again. I would be shocked if the pact ends on November the 19th. It's just not his flavor to do so.
Okay, so if this is going to be an on again, off again situation leading right up to the 19th, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, he'll
So
stretch it to the end.
right, right, okay. Uh, but this ongoing conflict is something that obviously is going to be a big impact for the markets going forward. One of the things that you had in this morning's update, Jim, that kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck was that President Biden's top national security advisors have engaged in recent months in confidential conversations with top aides to Russian President Vladimir Putin. It seems like there's a whole lot of conversations going on beneath the surface.
Yes. Well, that has been rumored before. Now we got the fact. The U.S. wants a negotiated settlement here. They don't want this to drag on and on for years, a la Afghanistan, a la Vietnam, and Afghanistan relative to when Russia was bogged, the old Soviet Union was bogged down. Ukrainian's president has been leery of this. And now he also said over the weekend, no, these drones coming in from Iran has decreased the odds that we can have a negotiated settlement or at least talks, Chip. But sooner or later, something's going to have to happen here because, as I've said before, the hardest question I get in my speeches is where does this conflict end? How does it
Yeah.
end? And the most palatable way is negotiations, but when he's pillared the country, the infrastructure, the crass killings of the citizens, it's hard to negotiate if you're on the Ukrainian side. But this clearly shows, I think, the bent of the some in the Biden administration, and I would imagine Ukraine is not happy about what they're reading.
Right. You know, some of this got into the energy markets last week. We've got crude oil futures back on top of $90 a barrel, but there's also the claims by of Saudi Arabia that Iran is getting ready to attack Saudi Arabia. This is just one of those that just seems so unlikely to me, but they must have some intelligence that suggests it's a possibility.
Yeah, then you also have to watch Israel. Watch
Yeah.
Israel in this one here, coming to the defense of its allies, and they don't waver at all. Israel doesn't. So
Right.
yeah, it's called a potential powder keg,
Right.
and literally on it. And the market, especially the wheat market, is very volatile on this situation.
It certainly is. Let's stay on energy here for a little bit. EPA and Growth Energy agreed to a 2-week extension of the RFS proposals deadline. Boy, just when you think a court-ordered deadline is going to get you the results that you're looking for, you get a 2-week delay.
It's happened before, and
Yeah.
Pro Farmer had last item on front page 2 issues ago speculating that this would likely happen.
Yeah.
It was an easy speculation item, Chip. Reason, EPA has still not sent the rule over to the Office of Management and Budget.
Yeah,
So
and that can
we
take 90 days.
it can take a while, at
Yeah.
least 2 weeks. So this was just going to happen.
Yeah.
As Farmer Ag Secretary Dick Ling used to say, if you don't like it, throw me in jail. I need the rest anyway.
Oh, too good. Too good. Okay, the jobs data that we got on Friday, non-farm payroll increases 261,000. The average trade guess was around 200,000. Unemployment rate ticked up to 3.7% from 3.5%. This isn't a bad enough jobs report to sway the Fed from pursuing higher interest rates, is it?
No, the best economists that I follow, Chip, say we need a number in the low 100s,
Yeah.
like 100 to 120,000. and before it's a clear signal to the marketplace that those prior interest rate rises are really starting to hurt. And
Right.
it's coming. Oh, it's coming. I don't know whether it will be the next report or two reports. And bottom line for the Fed, that actually made them, I'm not saying they were happy about it, but they made it clear, at least Chairman Powell did, Jerome J. Powell, that they're going to, don't even talk about a pivot yet.
No.
They're going to
Too
keep
early to
increasing
speculate.
rates and longer than the market thought. So
Yeah.
we're talking by the time they at least end, we're into that 5 to 6% range on the Fed funds rate.
Yeah. The comments in the post meeting press briefing with Powell, uh, he is clearly not concerned about overshooting
No.
with the interest rate increases to slow the economy, with the idea that an interest rate reduction will be very quick to re-stimulate the economy. I don't know if that's right or not, but he's not afraid of overshooting on the top
No.
side at all.
Not anymore because of his
No.
and the Fed's prior literal mistakes. And he's probably also looking ahead. He'll never say this publicly, looking ahead to the mandatory hearings in Congress next year, early next year, I think February sometime. I'm going to have to look up those dates,
Yeah.
in which he appears before the House and Senate panels. And uh, with a likely Republican controlled House, he knows he's going to be really pounced on. So he has to be aggressive
Right.
in fighting inflation.
Right. 9 days until the deadline, or I guess until the vote is supposed to be completed to ratify the tentative agreement between the labor unions. There was another approval over the weekend, right?
Yes, and we're having a couple more of the biggest unions coming up soon, Chip. And the one or two that voted it down can always resurrect it, unless they really want to play this the congressional card. Congress comes back, and there won't be any stoppage until Congress has a chance to deal with that. Now that's high anxiety mode,
Okay.
but at least one, if not two of those unions want to pass the buck to Congress and let them settle it.
Right. Another one from over the weekend, and this one, some I think are still considering this fairly low priority, but USDA confirmed a high path avian influenza in a commercial poultry flock in Mississippi. We've if we get it into the South, Jim, and somehow, some way it gets into the broiler houses.
Yeah. Whoosh. Yeah.
Oh,
It's some people tell me it's not a question of if, it's when, Chip. I hope
oh,
they're wrong, but I know. Here we go again. It just tells you how it's similar in that regards to the hog sector one, that
yeah,
if it gets on the border, which it's near,
yeah,
again, the clock is ticking. Again, hope I'm wrong, but
right,
these things have a way of spreading.
right. Okay, late last week, the whole world was kind of like, "Oh, here we go. China's finally starting to loosen up. They're going to reevaluate their zero tolerance policy on COVID." And then over the weekend, Chinese officials came out and said, "Hey, not so fast. We're not getting rid of it yet."
Yeah. I told Brian Grady, editor of Pro Farmer, that, I don't see them officially confirming a change until March. There's another party congress or another high level meeting taking place at that time, Chip. So uh, now the Chinese equity markets closed higher today. Which told a number of traders that they don't believe these officials who are squashing it. I think that's something
Yeah,
to note. But Apple,
yeah,
iPhones, et cetera, is really concerned because it's really impacting the production of their high-end phones, of which I have their latest, and it's a good one. But they're warning people who want it now they're going to have to wait longer. So it's biting Apple now. it's usually China telling Apple what to do. Now I think Apple's putting pressure on China as well, maybe at the highest levels.
Okay. Uh, the Chinese soybean imports in October, when they would normally start loading up with U.S. soybeans, the lowest in 8 years,
Yeah.
Jim. I don't know exactly what this is telling us, but it doesn't make me feel good about the Chinese economy.
No, and let me put a linkage on this to U.S. trade policy or the lack of it. This is why we have to expand our market access to other countries. We can't find one market as big as China right away, but a number and the commodity groups are very good in trying to find markets,
Oh yeah,
India, etc., Latin America. But this shows you have to get that market access talks going around the world, and we just have not that much. And this is going to be one of the longer term implications of any Republican takeover the House, because you're going to have pressure put on the Biden administration, in particular U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai, of why aren't we expanding market access? So, watch this unfold in the months ahead.
right. Okay, before we get to the elections, we've got a comment here from Gary. And Melody. We'll jump on Melody's comment first. She was there right away. Surprised. Good morning, by the way. Surprised by the number of acres of corn left to harvest in Ohio as we traveled through on Saturday. Good progress here in Iowa from what I've observed. That Ohio and parts of Indiana, remember, they got planted really late, really late. And it wasn't all the acres, but it was late enough that it's pushing back this harvest. And it's we look at the harvest conditions in Iowa. We had 2 inches of rain on Friday into Saturday, Jim. Very welcome from my perspective. I saw the Mississippi River this weekend, and I can tell you that it's coming up.
That's
And
good.
that's great news. But we've made really significant harvest, guys. We're back in the field already on Sunday afternoon after a 2 inch rain. That shows you how bad we needed it. And I think we're going to continue to make some pretty good progress.
And
And
Chip,
progress in
Ohio
these
has
is
a
help.
history of harvest
Yeah,
related issues. I can't remember how many stories we've had in Pro Farmer over the years.
right. Okay, and this one from Gary. Jim, has there ever been a walk back wing for a president this overworked? No drilling comment at the rally in New York over the weekend. He says there's no drilling.
Yeah. He put the kibosh primarily on drilling, and then the investment money has squandered any significant increase in drilling because of we're going to do the crude oil or fossil fuel industry in. So it's not hard to
How
explain.
how would you like to be the press secretary for this president and have to walk back as many statements as this as this core has had to do?
It's rough. It is rough. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just bad. Just bad.
It, okay. You don't want to comment on this much today, do you?
No, because I mean, now the die is cast for Biden. He's not going to run again. He can't run again. And if he does, he's going to have significant challengers from his own party, especially after they see the results after the midterm
40,
elections. We'll know in the
44%,
House, but we may not know in the Senate.
44% approval rating, lower than Trump at the first midterm, lower than Obama at the first midterm. That is an indicator, at the president's first midterm. At President Obama's first midterm, Democrats lost something like 60 seats in the House, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they had more to lose. Now, remember the last
right.
election, the Republicans gained 14, so that's why you're limited. But, over the weekend, there were some kerfuffles amongst the political prognosticators, one who's my friend and you've had on AgriTalk, David Wasserman of the Cook Political
Mhm.
Report, and others of chastising them. Why do they have so many House seats, for example, in toss-up categories? Because somebody has to win. So why don't they lean a
Yep.
certain way so we can get a better picture? And it looks like David's going to do that sometime on Tuesday, he said.
Okay. Well, the poll results are coming on Tuesday. What are your expectations, Jim? How do you think this is going to play out?
I'm at the top side of most of the ranges on the House side on the net gains of the Republicans. I'd be in the 20 to 30 area, maybe even more, depending on how certain groups split. Independents, looks like they're leaning toward the Republicans. Look, the Hispanic vote, I think the Republican Party is capturing more of the prior spread that they usually had with the Democrats being favored. And even the suburban white women voters, basis the Wall Street Journal survey last week, is trending toward the Republican Party. The minorities, just not the Hispanics. You add up all that, and it's a mini wave election in the House, but not so in the Senate. I think that's a candidate issue up and down the line, both parties, but primarily the Republicans. And on Biden's poor poll numbers, Chip, I like to point
Yeah.
out that in most cases, the Democratic candidate is polling above Biden. That shows you his problems. Okay. So, to
Yeah.
what degree
Yes,
is
I
that
hear you.
going to get the Democrats over the line, irrespective of Biden polling so low?
Right. Right. And it does look like the strategy Obama out in a more active role in this election is paying off because the enthusiasm of the likely Democrat voter has picked right up and I think the latest poll showed that it equals the enthusiasm of the Republican voters.
Absolutely, and that's another indication of how some late issues can really change some outcomes. Obama is still the star of the Democratic Party, and he's using that
Yeah.
luster there. And although not all of his comments have been more of the pragmatic side, a lot of them have been. When he gets to the average American, Chip, he says, they don't want to think about all this stuff and don't throw so much
Mhm.
at them. And most Americans understand that. So I think he's hitting a beat right there.
Okay. House GOP leader, you mentioned that they're looking at the Hispanic McCarthy. I think it was just yesterday was rallying for three Hispanic GOP women that are contesting to represent key districts along the southern border. Boy, that
Yeah.
seems like three
Latinas.
very important votes for the House.
Oh, absolutely. So the night of the campaign, we're going to watch those southern area, Rio Grande area in Texas, and see if the Republicans did, do that well, as the polls tend to suggest they will. Now, the Hispanic vote is not monolithic. You have the Hispanic vote in Florida, Cuban oriented, where in Texas it's Mexican immigrants and things like that. So, with that caveat, still as an aggregate group, they're favoring more than they historically have on the Republican side. So definitely, and and McCarthy as the likely new House Speaker, if the Republicans win, Chip, he needs probably 25 or more net gain, so has more freedom in
Yep.
he and his leadership in order to do what they really want to do, rather than worry about the far right people in his caucus.
Right. It's interesting. Pelosi's abilities as House Speaker in the current Congress, in the current House, has been restricted by having to you know answer to, I guess, the
Deal with.
progressive side of her party.
Yes.
Uh, how much of a majority needed for McCarthy to rule that was to lead as a moderate.
Well, I want to see the spread, and it could force him into a similar aspect. Remember when John Boehner was the Republican leader in the House? He was wedged in from the Freedom Caucus. So, oh, definitely, it can
Yep.
be limiting on that. And this is a reason why Pelosi was internally upset because had it not been for the so-called progressives in her party, the far liberal candidates, AOC et al., Bernie Sanders, she would have gotten some things much earlier that she wanted rather than waiting months and months to have to deal with Manchin, Sinema from her own party as well. And that cost time. That costs time.
Yeah.
And that can happen
Okay.
to the Republicans. And already we're seeing the White House is beginning to signal maybe a November meeting in person between Chinese leader Xi
Yeah.
Jinping and President Biden. But if the House goes Republican, they could give a direct signal to Biden, you better not be too weak on China. So you can see how
Right.
the implications are already starting.
That's exactly where I was going to go next, Jim. Just say, let's imagine that the Wiesemeyer projections are on the mark here, and the GOP claims decisive control of the House, has a majority in the Senate. What does it mean for those China relations? And boy, uh, it with we talked about the powder keg in the Middle East that is obviously exists. You look at North Korea, South Korea, China, Japan, the the potential powder keg that is in
It's
Asia
there. Yeah.
is very concerning.
Well, China's watching closely the trade talks between the U.S. and Taiwanese officials in New York this week. So it's just another irritant in the U.S.-China relationships, or the lack thereof, Chip. So,
Right.
yeah, but bottom line, if just one of the chambers goes to the Republicans, I'm assuming the House will, usually the markets like that because there's
Yes.
more certainty, believe it or not, that not
Yep.
many things will happen.
Right.
There won't be another fiscally spending bill.
Right.
The odds drop significantly for that. And then if the Republicans go too far, Biden has the powerful use of the veto. So, but you
Yep.
watch the markets usually react positively to split governments. And there's a history after midterms that the market goes up significantly over the 4 to 5 months after the midterms.
Yeah. Well, business likes luck. They know what rules they're going to be dealing with going forward for at least a period of time, because neither party is going to be able to get anything done.
Yes, and this could go into the
Fair enough.
2024 elections as far as
Yeah.
their outlook, because depending on how Florida goes, look at the spread. We don't know yet of how much Senator Marco Rubio is going to win his Senate race, and also Ron DeSantis. This could give him a stepping stone
Right.
to the 2024 Republican nomination. So all this is just not implications for 2023 and 24, but it's the next presidential election as well.
As Adam says here, this is a completely different political dynamic than, say, 10 years ago. Can't argue that.
No, can't argue that. And we need some stability. And that's why I personally think the independents are the key, not only this election, but if Trump does run, the rumor is that November, nothing's really a rumor to Trump. He signals everything, but around November the 14th, he'll announce. But the independents are going to be a big drag on any Trump candidacy, because the majority of independent voters will not vote for him again. I've had too many conversations around this great country. So
Yeah.
watch the independents. As far as a different political dynamic, absolutely. It's just the visceral relationship. And again, I want to go back to what former Ag Secretary Clayton Yiter from Nebraska, he's no longer with us, told Pro Farmer many years ago, that more stability in Congress will come once we have a true minority party that cannot come back into power the next election. We won't be there after these elections, but if the Democrats don't regroup and go back to their forte of how they won prior elections, more for the people, rather than doing this choice versus a referendum on the party's decisions, the Republicans could be there in a few elections as
Very
the
good.
powerful party, as opposed to the Democrats, a true minority.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, Jim. This week we get the crop production and world egg supply and demand report that comes on Wednesday. On Thursday, we get the consumer price index for October. Both of those reports, well, I should say all three of those reports are going to be very important for the markets going forward.
And I'll be Wednesday, American Ag Bankers Association meeting in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm going to have to be up all night to do my presentation. And then later this week in Kansas City to Farmers Mutual and Hale. We should know pretty good what happened in the House, but we still may have some lingering battles in the Senate. Georgia could have a potential December 6th runoff, squeezy tight in Arizona, Pennsylvania. So we could just be waiting for those absentee and mail ballots to be counted in Pennsylvania. I just hope some people in the Republican Party don't cry foul just because we have to wait again, Chip, to be honest with you.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much for listening this morning. Today on Agri Talk, we've got Machinery Pete and Dan Bosby. This afternoon, Don Close from American Ag Credit. That's this afternoon at 2:06 Central. Have a great week. Get out and vote and keep watching for